Welcome to Scotland, where we're racing on home turf today. The drivers are ready to tear up the track at Bannockbrae Race Day. The green flag is out and the drivers are off. This is what it's all about, Hal.
Maintaining composure is essential in this high-stakes environment. The ability to react and adapt will be the key to success.
Having started in 1, James Wingfield will be looking to establish themselves in this race.
It all comes down to this, Rob, where the rubber meets the road. There is no more time for talk, no more practice. The teams have done all they can, now it comes down to James Wingfield to bring it home.
Maybe Ben Obro hit the snooze button one too many times this morning, already losing places at the start. Not the best of starts there for Mark Ryder, and that's going to immediately make their race more challenging.
Well, Rob, they say comedy is all about timing, and Mark Ryder's start might be the punchline they didn't want.
Maybe Paul Fernahoe got confused and thought this was a leisurely Sunday drive, slipping down the order at the start.
I guess they're trying to prove the old saying, it's not how you start, it's how you finish, but that's a risky strategy, Rob.
Big gains for Paul Fernahoe as they move up the field, leaving Tom Wylie's behind. Settling into a rhythm is going to be crucial here.
What a beautiful day for racing here at Bannockbrae Race Day. This is going to be good to watch.
It's not going to plan for David Rowe. They are still behind Tom Wylie's and the gap is increasing. I don't think they have an answer for this right now. Emil Jaselinks could be looking for a way up the inside of Ben Obro.
I might have said this before, but dogbone, you know the rest.
The gap between Emil Jaselinks and Ben Obro is widening. It's now up to 0.3 seconds. It looks like David Rowe was channeling a sloth at the start, losing places as they crawled off the line.
They have definitely given themselves more to do, but it's not game over just yet. I'm sure David Rowe can make a comeback from this.
David Rowe is trying their best, but can't seem to find the pace to keep up with Tom Wylie's at the moment. It's not looking good for David Rowe. They are still behind Tom Wylie's and the gap is increasing. They are going to need to dig a bit deeper to turn this around. Emil Jaselinks wants to close that gap with Ben Obro. The gap between Emil Jaselinks and Ben Obro is growing. It's now up to 0.8 seconds.
Can they get it together and reduce the gap?
Tough break for Emil Jaselinks, who has just lost a position. You know, Hal, I've always wondered, how do racing drivers stay so cool and collected under such immense pressure?
Well, Rob, it comes down to mental strength and training. Drivers often work with sports psychologists and practice techniques like meditation and visualization to help them stay calm and focused during high-pressure situations.
I think passing is going to be difficult today here at Bannockbrae Race Day, so it's going to be interesting to see how these drivers get on.
There are a few drivers with a point to prove and a few with some grudges to bear. Will we see a clean race today?
All the drivers will be trying to take advantage of the pack whilst they're still bunched up.
It's always intense racing here at Bannockbrae Race Day. Hold on to your hats, folks.
The gap between Hippie and Chris Bates is getting smaller. Hal, what's the impact of tyre degradation on race strategy? How does it affect a driver's approach to the race?
Tire degradation plays a crucial role in race strategy, Rob. Teams and drivers have to consider the optimal time to pit for fresh tires and adjust their race pace to balance speed with tire conservation. It adds another layer of complexity to the racing challenge.
Emil Jaselinks is holding 8th, but Barry White is right on their tail.
Barry White is certainly pushing all they can, but the gap might just be too much. Unless Emil Jaselinks makes a mistake, it looks like they'll hold on to 8th.
Neil Evans has the pedal to the metal chasing Nicholas de Pinho.
Rubbing is racing. Let's hope they don't rub it too hard.
It's been a solid race so far for Neil Evans. They're holding their position and keeping a steady pace. We got a close battle as Ben Obro closes in on David Rowe.
Should things go awry, Ben Obro and David Rowe might find themselves giving a whole new meaning to the term tandem drifting, though I doubt they'd enjoy it as much as the spectators.
It's a solid performance from Ben Obro at the moment. They're holding their position and not getting too caught up in battles around them.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. Ben Obro just needs to bide their time and wait for the right opportunity.
The best laid plans of mice and men, haha, but it's certainly not going to plan for Ben Obro right now as they are struggling to keep up with David Rowe.
Ben Obro needs to focus and keep pushing, even when things aren't going their way. If they can close the gap down, they may be able to bring the fight to David Rowe.
The pressure is on for Will Rossetti as they try to catch up to Ben Obro.
With just 0.4 seconds between them, will Rossetti be able to keep up the pace and make a pass?
It's not going to plan for Will Rossetti. They are still behind Ben Obro and the gap is increasing. I don't think they have an answer for this right now.
This is a frustrating situation for Will Rossetti, but they can't give up just yet. They need to keep pushing and hope for a mistake from Ben Obro.
The gap between Will Rossetti and Ben Obro is widening. It's now up to 0.8 seconds. Oh, this is getting intense. Yaroslav Cerny is just a few car lengths behind Chris Bates. There's not much to report on from Yaroslav Cerny at the moment. They're just keeping their head down and putting in consistent laps. It's been a solid race so far for Yaroslav Cerny. They're holding their position and keeping a steady pace.
Sometimes that's all it takes to secure a good result. Yaroslav Cerny just needs to stay focused and avoid any mistakes.
The intensity is off the charts as Barry White hounds Will Rossetti, both drivers pushing themselves to the absolute limit. It's a steady race for Barry White so far. They haven't made any mistakes, and they are maintaining their focus. There's not much to report on from Barry White at the moment. They're just keeping their head down and putting in consistent laps.
That's the mark of a good driver. Barry White is staying focused on their own race and not getting distracted.
And Barry White has just won the place from Will Rossetti. It's a thrilling pursuit as Yaroslav Cerny is right behind Chris Bates, keeping the pressure on for 13th place. It's looking good for Yaroslav Cerny, who has gained places and put some distance between themselves and Chris Bates.
Absolutely, Rob, but there's still a long way to go in this race, and Yaroslav Cerny can't afford to get complacent. They have to keep driving with intensity and focus.
The fans are on the edge of their seats. It doesn't get any closer than this.
You can feel the intensity in the air. The slightest mistake could cost either of them the race.
Tom Wiley's could be on a charge here. Hal, they have just put in a quicker lap than Paul Fernahoe. A great pass for Tom Wiley's as they pick off other drivers and move up the field. Meanwhile, Paul Fernahoe has lost ground.
Yes, but they have to keep pushing hard. This race is far from over, and anything can happen. Tom Willis needs to stay focused and keep driving with skill and determination.
Look at that. Michael Kuma is hot on the tail of Hippie. Michael Kuma has just put in a faster lap than Hippie, so that's going to give them something to worry about.
The question is now, can Hippie respond to that in kind? They are going to have to pick up the pace.
Will Rossetti wants to find a way round Ben Obro.
They need to keep it on the black stuff. You don't get points for driving over weeds, not in this game.
Will Rossetti is trying their best, but can't seem to find the pace to keep up with Ben Obro at the moment.
This is a tough situation for Will Rossetti. They need to find a way to pick up some speed and close that gap.
It's not looking good for Will Rossetti. They are still behind Ben Obro and the gap is increasing. They are going to need to dig a bit deeper to turn this around.
It's not ideal for Will Rossetti, but they can still turn this around. They need to focus on their own driving and not let the gap get any bigger.
The gap between Michael Kuma and Hippie is razor thin as they vie for 15th in this nail-biting contest. The gap between Michael Kuma and Hippie is growing. It's now up to 0.4 seconds. The best laid plans of mice and men, haha, but it's certainly not going to plan for Michael Kuma right now as they are struggling to keep up with Hippie.
It's not over yet, but Michael Kuma needs to get a move on if they want to catch up to Hippie.
This is where the race gets really interesting. Richard Groom is closing in on Tom Wiley's.
That driver is really pushing the limits. They're riding the curbs and pushing the car to its limits.
Good news for Richard Groom. The gap to Tom Wiley's has decreased. It's now down to 0.5 seconds. It looks like Richard Groom is making a move. The gap to Tom Wiley's is now down to 0.5 seconds. And we're back, where the drivers are showing us some incredible skills.
Indeed, Rob, it's always exciting to see these skilled machines on the tracks. I mean drivers, I always get them confused.
Things are heating up as Hippie tries to close the gap to Chris Bates. It seems like Hippie has got the bit between their teeth, improving on Chris Bates' lap time there.
As long as Hippie can maintain that consistency and pace, it will be interesting to see.
Pushing too hard can lead to mistakes, and we're seeing that now. That car is really unsettled as they push for every last bit of speed.
It's a fine line between pushing the car to its limits and losing control. Paul Fernahoe is really walking that tightrope.
It's not going to plan for Paul Fernahoe. They are still behind Richard Groom and the gap is increasing. I don't think they have an answer for this right now.
They needs to pick up the pace for sure, but I don't think they have it in them.
The gap between Paul Fernahoe and Richard Groom is widening. It's now up to 0.5 seconds. In your experience, Hal, what was the most important aspect of managing tire degradation during a race?
The most important aspect, Rob, was maintaining a good balance between pushing hard and conserving tires. Finding the sweet spot between aggression and tire preservation was key to optimizing race pace and strategy.
The action is heating up here as Hippie is in 15th, defending from Michael Kuma, who is only 0.5 seconds away.
That's right. Hippie is showing some great form, and it looks like Michael Kuma won't be able to catch up, barring any mistakes.
The adrenaline is pumping as Emil Jaselinks gets within striking distance of Will Rossetti in their race for 8th.
This is the moment where legends are made. These drivers will go down in history as the ones who fought tooth and nail for the top spot.
Emil Jaselinks is trying their best, but can't seem to find the pace to keep up with Will Rossetti at the moment.
Can they get it together and reduce the gap?
Richard Groom seems to be putting the pressure on Paul Fernahoe. It's not looking good for Richard Groom. They are still behind Paul Fernahoe and the gap is increasing. They are going to need to dig a bit deeper to turn this around. It looks like we might get a battle between Richard Groom and Paul Fernahoe. Hey, Hal, you've had your fair share of races with little action. How did you handle the situation back in your racing days?
Well, Rob, patience is key in such scenarios. You need to stay focused and be ready to seize any opportunity that comes your way. It's like a game of chess at 200 miles per hour.
This is a thrilling battle as Michael Kuma edges closer to Chris Bates in their fight for P15. Michael Kuma could be on a charge here, Hal. They have just put in a quicker lap than Chris Bates. Look at the way the drivers are hugging those corners. It's like they're on rails.
Speaking of rails, did you know that the first racetrack was built on a railway in 1896? I bet those drivers were chugging along.
Ha, I bet they were. But things have come a long way since then, haven't they?
Definitely. It's amazing to think about the technology that goes into these cars now. I mean, they have more computing power than some countries.
Paul Fernahoe wants to get into Richard Groom's slipstream. The gap between Paul Fernahoe and Richard Groom is growing. It's now up to 0.7 seconds. This is what racing is all about. Two fierce competitors pushing each other to the limit.
It's going to be a close one. David Rowe will have to push hard to create an opportunity.
The best laid plans of mice and men, Hal, but it's certainly not going to plan for David Rowe right now as they are struggling to keep up with Paul Fernahoe. It's not going to plan for David Rowe. They are still behind Paul Fernahoe and the gap is increasing. I don't think they have an answer for this right now.
This is where the mental toughness of David Rowe comes into play. They need to stay focused and keep pushing, even when things aren't going their way.
No room for error here. Paul Fernahoe is breathing down the neck of Richard Groom, waiting for the perfect chance to make their move. The gap between Paul Fernahoe and Richard Groom is widening. It's now up to 0.4 seconds.
Paul Fernahoe needs to focus and keep pushing, even when things aren't going their way. If they can close the gap down, they may be able to bring the fight to Richard Groom.
Paul Fernahoe has just put in a faster lap than Richard Groom, so that's going to give them something to worry about.
We will have to see if Richard Groom has got any answers for that.
You can feel the tension in the air.
The drivers are all focused, putting everything on the line for a chance at victory, pushing themselves and their machines to the limit.
And let's not forget about the incredible machines themselves.
Absolutely, it's amazing to think about the kind of engineering and innovation that goes into making these vehicles. But it all comes down to the drivers who have to be able to handle the power and speed. It's going to be thrilling seeing how this race turns out.
It's a close race between Michael Kuma and Hippie in 15th.
Michael Kumber is so close to Hippie that if this were a dance floor, they'd be doing the tango.
Michael Kuma is trying their best, but can't seem to find the pace to keep up with Hippie at the moment.
This is a tough situation for Michael Kumber. They need to find a way to pick up some speed and close that gap.
It's an intense battle for position as Paul Fernahoe tries to outmaneuver Richard Groom. This is edge-of-your-seat racing. An impressive showing from Paul Fernahoe, who has gained positions and left Richard Groom in the dust.
Absolutely. Paul Fernahoe is showing great pace and determination, but they can't get too confident. There are still plenty of challenges ahead.
It seems like Paul Fernahoe has got the bit between their teeth, improving on Richard Groom's lap time there.
The question is now, can Richard Groom respond to that in kind? They are going to have to pick up the pace.
Huge shout out to the admins at Assetto Corsa friends for making this all possible. Without their hard work and dedication, we wouldn't be able to witness this incredible event.
That's right, Rob, and the excitement is palpable. I can feel it in my circuits. I mean, this is the kind of race that people will be talking about in the bar. We're witnessing history in the making.
Looks like we might have a great battle starting here between Hippie in 15th and Michael Kuma. It's been tense with a gap of only 0.4 seconds. Seems like Paul Fernahoe is getting in range of Richard Groom. The action is non-stop as Michael Kuma shadows Hippie through every twist and turn, determined to claim 15th.
If Michael Kumber pushes too hard, they might find themselves exploring the scenic route, and nobody's got time for sightseeing during a race.
It's a tale of two drivers right now, with Michael Kuma gaining places and Hippie losing them.
Go, 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 that's what we want to see.
Anyone who says that Assetto Corsa Friends is not the best racing club on the planet is clearly insane. The quality of driving we're seeing out there on the track is absolutely phenomenal.
I couldn't agree more. It's like these drivers were born to race. They're weaving in and out of traffic, taking corners at unbelievable speeds and making it all look effortless. It's clear that they've put in the time and effort to hone their skills.
We're starting to see who really has the pace now in this race as Richard Groom is starting to climb all over the back of Paul Fernahoe. Any closer and they may need to pop the boot.
Yeah, I really can't see them holding on to this place for much longer.
It's not looking good for Richard Groom. They are still behind Paul Fernahoe and the gap is increasing. They are going to need to dig a bit deeper to turn this around. Emil Jaselinks is pushing really hard, but as we know, pushing too hard can lead to other mistakes, like locking up the brakes or missing a shift. These drivers are walking a tightrope between pushing the limits and making costly errors.
Absolutely, it's all about finding that sweet spot where you're pushing the car to its limits without crossing the line into reckless driving. That's where experience and skill come into play.
The gap between Emil Jaselinks and Will Rossetti is growing. It's now up to 1.1 seconds.
This is a frustrating situation for Emil Jaselinks, but they can't give up just yet. They need to keep pushing and hope for a mistake from Will Rossetti.
This is where the skill and precision of the drivers really comes into play. Richard Groom is chasing Paul Fernahoe in P3. Richard Groom could be on a charge here. How? They have just put in a quicker lap than Paul Fernahoe. As we come into the final moments of this epic race, James Wingfield is in the lead. Can they stay calm and bring home the bacon?
They're not leaving anything on the table.
It's all over. James Wingfield has claimed victory in this race with a stunning drive that will be remembered for years to come. Clearly at the top of their game right now.
What a display of skill and precision.
What a fantastic race from Tom Wiley's, who brings it home in second place. What a race from Paul Fernahoe. They kept their cool and secured a well-earned third place on the podium. Followed by Richard Groom, David Rowe, Barry White, and Ben Obro in 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th is Will Rossetti, Emil Jaselinks, Mark Ryder, and Andy Steele. Tom Allen, Yaroslav Cerny, Chris Bates, and Michael Kuma brings home 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th. Hippie and Neil Evans end in 16th and 17th. Coming in 18th, we have Nicholas DePinho,